You're listening to CRBRadio.com.
Oh,
The words and opinions
Lucky-
you are
lucky
about
shot.
to hear do not reflect the management, sponsors, or affiliates
Next one's going in your
Radio
ear.
broadcast.
You guys remember that scene in Silence of the Lambs? Some fava beans.
No.
Who's leading us in?
You.
That's
Aha.
easy. Why doesn't... Okay.
You're already in.
We're already here. Hello, everyone. It is the 401 show. Today's Thursday, May 30th. One more day to go in May. I know that one for a fact.
We've made it, guys.
Almost. No, I'm still... You and Ashley, we are not... We haven't made it until I get in bed, lights off,
Almost.
and no nuclear explosions. We make it. Sid, hello.
Hi.
Helen of Troy, hello. We've got a special friend here today. Potential, we'll see. He might be doing some stuff with the show. He's the son of a dear friend of ours, Aiden O'Neill. How's it going, buddy?
Going pretty good.
Tell us, why don't you give us the 1-minute backstory on yourself?
Well, born and raised in Michigan. I think I moved to Canton when I was about 5 years old. Loving mother, lived in Canton. My dad lived in Canton for a little while. He now lives in Livonia. Parents have basically been divorced. That's about it, honestly. Been living a happy life.
So you're a young man, correct?
Yeah.
18, if I'm not mistaken?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So we're going to have... this gives us a good perspective because I'm going to be interested in...
Perspective.
Yeah, we've got everything covered here from blacks to whites to Hispanics, men to women. We might even have a hybrid on the team. I'm not sure that's a joke from last week. All age groups, John. It's a good mix. Kind of like it that way. You now officially represent the youth of the show.
Oh.
Unfortunately, though, you are now the bottom man on the totem pole, even lower than Helen. And I know the day was never going to come, but it's here. So what does that mean? You know, if Helen's like, Aiden, I could go for some cookies and milk right now.
You're
what
the
you-
intern now.
And when you get back, I've been on these feet all day. These dogs need a rub down. I know. It's like a little bit of a family environment. But when it comes to work, like, we're pretty serious. We cover serious topics here, which I think you're somewhat familiar with, yes? From what
Yes, I checked you guys out. I looked you guys up on YouTube, saw a bunch of your live streams. Love the topics. My mom was like, "You guys need to go check them out, see what you think of it." And I told her, I was like, "Mom,
Get a little closer to the mic just to be safe.
I was like, these guys literally talk about everything that I like to talk about. Politics, weird conspiracy theories, just things that people like to talk about, the things that people really want to hear." And I'm like, all right, that's awesome. Get me in it. Let's do this.
Do most people your age like talking about that stuff, or are you more of a rarity?
When it comes to conspiracy theories, politics, people just tend to get into arguments and fights. People don't really tend to discuss things anymore. People just tend to just get angry and tell
Very good
tell
point.
them
They're
what
not
they
talking.
know. They don't really care about what you know. They just want to tell you what they know. It's the synapses of interactions between kids my age now.
Kids our age too. It wasn't like that at least when I was younger, but it seems there's definitely something going on with the way our relationships aren't with people anymore. They're now with computer screens.
Very true.
Even in your own home. I mean, we've all been in situations or seen them where the family's at dinner and 2 or 3 of the kids are on their phone and mom's doing this and we're still like the relationship's still with our computers even when we're in proximity of each other. So the only other time I'd ever really spoken about stuff like this to anyone in your age bracket, and I did not know how this was going to be received, was a speech I gave at Michigan after the first movie came out. And I forgot the professor's name. It was a philosophy class. And we screened part of the movie. And I took a poll to start because I had no idea I didn't know if the entire class was going to just be completely closed-minded to alternative theories of things, or if they would embrace it, or and I got a little nerved out because the first question I go, who thinks that 9/11 might have been an inside job? And like no one raised their hand, and I was like, what?
Yeah,
And my next question was, all right, who knows 9/11 was an inside job? And everyone in the class raised their hand.
Oh, what?
I know,
Come on.
it actually kind of surprised. Does that surprise you, or do most kids your age?
I've talked about this to a couple of people. Actually, whatchamacallit, I referenced your movie, actually. I told them to check out your stuff on YouTube. Actually, one of my teachers in sci-fi wanted to show your movie to, I think it was a civics teacher to show at my school.
Cool.
I'm not kidding.
If your mom wants to buy beers for us one night, I'll make you a deal. We'll come into your class if you get some sort of extra credit for it. And
Well, I'm not in school anymore.
oh, okay, never mind.
That was just when it was like talked about.
That would have been cool, though,
But
Dave.
if your mom wants to buy us cocktails part, that still stands. Am I wrong?
But in general, people, kids my age just go with whatever CNN says. Honestly, it's not really
Is that where people your age get their news? Is CNN?
just if it's on your phone screen and it has if it's on your phone screen and it has a big name above it and it says a message, that message is indoctrinated into your brain as kids. That's just how it is.
But there's a lot of science behind that. It's very true. Even happens while we don't even notice it. In fact, it was in one of our third or fourth episodes. Remember when we slowed down the send-off at night from the 1950s and 60s, where they had the words of America the Beautiful? Do you know what I'm talking about? But when they slow the film down, this is before you were born. Your mom might have remembered this. When you went to bed at night, all the stations would essentially stop broadcasting, and you'd get the little rainbow thing.
Really? There's
Yeah.
just like a certain time.
Oh God, you're such a youngster.
I am young. I'm sorry.
Jimmy, man, you got
I've
you and I
questioned-
need to stay united here.
Questions.
So he knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, no, you couldn't even get television after midnight. It was a very different, very different. I know. I think you couldn't even understand that now. And
Had
so,
radio too back in the days too,
yeah, exactly.
Radio what?
which they made look like television.
Radio tube?
They just listened to
Radio.
radios. They sat around a radio and talked. And I was
Imagine that, huh? And they made it sound like TV.
So, where was I going with this? Television news. I was reaching some
You
fabulous
were
point.
talking about like youth and like.
Oh, the sign off. So we had this episode where we remember this was broadcast on every channel in the United States every night for 20 some years. Americans, we were hit with this over and over and over and over. And while the words of, I believe it was America the Beautiful, are on screen, when you slow it down, there's a reverse back mask where words that say trust your government, government is Lord, God is the government. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
No?
It was like Jimmy, you remember that episode, right?
Do tell.
And I'll put it up for this episode. But when we played it, I remember KJ and Meeks were sitting here looking at it, and they were just like, oh, my God, I can't believe it. But it's like 9/11. Like, when you see it with your own eyes, red-handed, people make one of two decisions. They just kind of go back to being in the sheep of the war of the sheep, or they just kind of keep waking up.
Yeah.
18 years old. Is it normal? Like, your buddies, do they tease you because you talk about these things, consider them, or are they into them too? Or are you friends with the guys that are open-minded to that, and that's who you hang around with? Tell us a little of the dynamics of that.
My friends are my friends are the kind of friends where you can say literally anything and nothing will offend them. You know, everything is just sponge-like to them. You know, there's no such thing as a wrong thought. You know, so not really. You know, like I've actually talked to my roommate Jordan. You know, I've known him for quite a while about this, and he brought it up to a couple of my friends, and for whatever reason, they all loved it. They all loved talking about it. Even I brought up the what was it, the nanothermite or something that they were talking about at Ground Zero, and one of my buddies was like, "No way!" Like, they actually found them. Like, yeah, dude, it's pretty trippy. So like, people reject it at first, but then as soon as I sort of bring out this I guess you could say, golden ticket of thermite, which for some reason is a word that kids my age know. It's weird. It's like this golden term for just burning. Like why would kids our age know what thermite is? And
I didn't even know what it was in 2011.
I knew what it was before I watched your show, and I think you were building up to it, and you were like, it's a specific chemical that burns at like over 2,000 degrees. Like, oh, that's thermite. But they were intrigued by it. It kind of shocked me, honestly. But the general public, in my opinion, I feel, don't really like to talk about 9/11 just because of the humanitarian side of it. You know, the deaths, the firefighting, the loss, is just the overall just the mood and the atmosphere of the actual happening of it. So when you sort of throw it in everybody's faces that like, hey, this was done by us, people don't really want to like that. People don't really want to talk about it. People just sort of want to push it away into the dark, and you're like, oh my God, there's no way that our saint-like government could ever do something so sinister and evil to us. I'm like, really? Think that's the worst?
19 and he refuses to believe that it's an inside job so far.
That wouldn't even be the worst thing that the American government's done to us. That's
I mean,
the scary
like you
part.
said, kids see something on TV and it's automatic the truth, you know.
Mhm.
He's like, I saw those planes fly into the building. No, that's not the case here, though. Yeah, you saw them, but it's all, you know, it's all predictable.
And like, and when we say the government, let's just understand the government's so huge, and it involves teachers and policemen and doctors and politicians and every kind of profession you can imagine. What we're really talking about are a few people that have an allegiance to something higher than the American flag. Obviously, because they were willing to attack our country, and they used some very influential positions of power, which they occupied. That's why I don't normally like to say the government, because it's not like our presidents plan this stuff. They're just, it's the power behind the presidency is what counts. Behind the kings, that's the power that counts. And that's always been, it's what John Todd was talking about a few episodes, that the priests behind the power, these are like the bloodline families, and very evil apparently. I wouldn't want to meet them in an alley, but...
Politician?
Oh, a politician.
I feel like you could win in a fight, but they're just more cunning, like in a war.
I feel like they try to lobby you to
You could
death.
beat them in an immediate battle, but in the war, they would win.
Politicians?
Oh, hell yeah. Mortal Kombat all day.
I like that terminology a lot.
I-
In battle, you'd win,
well-
but the war, you'd lose.
Well, yeah, I mean,
When it comes...
they had to draw this out, like, with a huge master plan as, like, chess. You know what I'm saying? So...
Yeah, it's. I don't even know if that they're as strategic as if there is just more willing to jump through all of the fake hoops to present something. Because at the end of the day, these people are not typically, they're not very strong. They don't have
That's what I'm saying.
moral
I feel like they're normal people.
integrity
so
and
I
character.
don't think they're necessarily like, oh, I'm going to beat you in a fight.
No,
you
if
know?
anything, I think they are. I mean, I don't know.
They're
how
the
you-
fat people telling people what to do for them. They ain't got no, like, agility. Like, you know, they ain't going to run a mile. They ain't going to win in a marathon. They're the people sitting around telling other people what to do.
Mm-hmm.
They're sitting back getting grapes fed to them and shit. Like, whatever.
Right.
Excuse me. And
So,
stuff.
yeah, you owe $1 to the jar. We got to get. You owe
Jeez.
like $1 million.
$1
I owe
million.
like $4.
I don't even have
You
$1
might
million.
have a clean balance so far, but
way.
no. But
That's not
I'm gonna
possible.
put Aiden in charge of keeping track. Helen's swear word on Thursday. Check. So,
Really.
what does that make you feel? So you now this happened for me at a much later age. I think for Jimmy, it happened for him at a younger age. Everyone else in here is pretty much younger than I am. But I trusted my government until I was about 42. And here again, when I say my government, understand I'm talking about the people behind it. And I spent a lot of time angry. Jimmy, were you angry too? Or did you just go into, figures?
I was 5 when I knew the government was up to something no good.
Are you serious?
I came up from a family of like White Panthers, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which,
sense.
did you get the message about your dad on my legal team?
I
tell
did.
him I said hello.
I will.
I haven't seen him in years. Tell him I said hi.
We're in this. We're at. Everyone knows I've got this little trial coming up tomorrow, and we're doing this mock.
He also said don't talk about it on the air.
Oh, he did. Okay. See, they're
See,
on.
naughty.
They
Can't be
me-
doing that.
They told me some things. I won't talk about the case.
You didn't talk about nothing.
You like dance around it though. You like
hope you know
try to
better
do
than
what you
that.
can.
You know what?
do that, yeah.
Because I don't like
Really
being
shouldn't.
fake. I don't like it. Just
I know,
bothers
but-
me.
Fine,
There's
but
something
there's a
that
difference
just-
between.
Sometimes it's
Okay,
just being
you're right,
safe.
you're right.
There's a
Look.
bigger picture. I know you want to like, but you gotta just wait till after Friday.
All right.
After
I will.
Friday, Saturday you can shove it up their ass.
No, you don't want to
Saturday
do that.
afternoon.
You don't want to do that.
No, I'm just.
Again, not helping my case. Sid, thank you. He obviously he cavorts with criminals. All right.
We're honest criminals.
Cavorts, what a word.
Your dad, he's like, do you know ch313.tv? And I'm sitting, my jaw drops, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the director of our show. He's like, that's my son. So, a small world.
Surprised he admitted it.
He's pretty proud of you, bro. We'll talk about that later. But it was small, very small world. So I can't talk about the case. So we'll move on. So the anger thing. A guy your age, how does that? What are you thinking now at your age when you come across this? What was your initial reaction, and how does it change the way you look at the world now?
I mean,
And your future.
I've had a pretty mature view on the world for majority of my life, honestly. I mean, it didn't really come to a
Let me be devil's advocate a little bit.
Go ahead.
How do you know you had a mature view? Because
'Cause
I'm
people
just going
told
to
me.
say what any 50-year-old would say. You're just an 18-year-old kid. Now, I'm not really saying that, but that's just the devil's advocate. So how are you aware?
More or
Is
less
that-
people just told me.
Okay.
And we just got it from other people. She told me a lot. But-
She's like that too.
What were we talking about? I lost track.
You were telling me about the emotional reaction of how
Uh-huh.
how it impacted you when you first got your arms around it, and how it does today.
It does. I don't know. It makes me feel almost powerless, but at the same time, I've always felt powerless because it's all an illusion. Honestly, it's. I don't really know how to put it. Honestly, it's indescribable when I had the realization of oh my God, the government really isn't looking out for us. It wasn't this profound realization. It was just that makes sense.
Makes sense.
That makes
Yes.
so much more sense now.
Things start falling, or all the pieces start fitting together,
Mhm.
and you figure it out. I mean,
Exactly.
I guess everybody's different, but yeah, it wasn't. I was angry, but it wasn't a surprise to me.
Right. It was more of oh my God, I can finally not feel so crazy that, all these feelings are kind of affirmed at that point.
When you started waking up, were you on your own, or
I was on drugs. I'm not going to lie. And I was with somebody that had been in the military, and he was telling me some really crazy, mind-blowing things that I cannot say again. But I was not the
Why did
same.
Jimmy's dad tell you not to talk about that too?
Jimmy's dad would probably advise me not to talk. Yeah. But I couldn't talk for 2 days after that. I literally went mute.
Well, how'd you know you were hearing the
Really?
truth? Or how did you, I mean,
It was just so much to take in. I literally had nothing left to give for a couple days. I had to process this information. I just needed a couple days. And I mean, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. And I was coming off of being on drugs. So, people were like, are you okay? I wasn't looking good. But I had just, had a ton of bricks just thrown at me. And a lot. He was saying, and how, everybody's saying, oh, it makes sense. And you can't choose to just not know once you know.
Right. Once
So
you know,
if
there's
Well, you
you're
thi-
like me and curiosity kills the cat, I'm the person that's hey, I want to get the closest to dying that I possibly can. I'm going to play with fire
oh my
until
God.
I die.
That's-
And so here I am, Dave.
But I will. There are some people, believe it. There are two people I have in mind, and the thing is they're who I thought were some of the smartest guys I've ever known. I'm not going to give you their names, but one of them was actually a guy that I met when he was about Aiden's age. He was going to Loyola to become a lawyer, and he ended up figuring out what this internet thing was in the early 90s, became our head of tech. He came with me for a bunch of companies. We did some good stuff together. We sold a couple of them, and he's now the head of VP of a Fortune 500 company out west. Saw the movie, and for me, I'm like, a smart person looks at this, they can't deny it. I mean, you just won't be able to deny it. He's like, Dave, I saw the movie, but I just got to tell you, I just don't believe it. I'm like, well, I don't get which part don't you believe? It wasn't a logical response. It was a psychological one. 'Cause we were in a way out of a comfort zone, which I understand, because this was a guy that he's actually very entrepreneurial, but some
There's
people
a term
need
for it, for the psychological, where
the cognitive dissonance.
maybe.
That might be it, but
Yeah, that I'm pretty sure that's it. Where you literally can't wrap your brain around it. Yeah, and your you just reject the entire.
yes.
It's a natural human thing. My family did it. They rejected me entirely. And they're just like, this idea and you can go. you know.
SID, cognitive. No, so this is like, it is a thing, because there's another friend of mine who's fraternity
real.
brother of mine.
Sure is.
This guy's I think he's maybe a PhD, certainly a master's business, investment banker. This guy's the real deal. Like, he puts multi-million, they don't even do deals that small anymore. Started his own firm. We've been buddies forever. I love the guy. He saw the movie, and I'm just like, I'm just here again. I'm assuming, he's totally going to get it. And he just looked at me. He's like, Dave, I'm just not a conspiracy theorist. And I'm like, let's remove the label. Okay, what did you just see? Are you saying that not one? It's not that. See, because when you look at something like 9/11, it's not that you have to. You've got to disprove. You've got to disprove all of it. You can't just pick one thing and explain, here's why squibs might have happened. Okay. You still got to explain the nanothermite and the free fall speed and a million images in the media predicting it was going to happen before it happened, and some other things that are just outside of our normal way of thinking. And even, it's not about intelligence. I think it's something psychological. It's cognitive
It's
dissonance.
traumatic to their entire existence.
Right.
So that trauma, it's like some people are strong enough to compute that and get over it. Like, some people can compute it and are just never the same. It's about getting over that and being able to function again and wanting to know more. Wanting to know more and not be satisfied and just like, I guess I don't have a choice in this. Shit's messed up. Dang it, I even tried not to.
I feel like a lot of
$2.
baby boomers like my mom's.
I think you're gonna need a calculator and a
I
lot
always
of
say
paper.
I'm on a roll today.
The best
I'm
way to
sorry,
get
I'm not in
into,
my right mind completely
Hey.
yet.
Go
The
ahead,
best way to
Jimmy.
get into 9/11, I always say, is really, you have to go with like a building that shouldn't have fallen, and that was Building 7. You know about Building 7?
Oh yeah.
That's where you must start. I mean, really, it's like all day long they're going to fight you on planes that hit a building and how it went down, which is absolutely untrue, because honestly, at the end of the day, if the buildings fell like they did, we'd have to go across the United States and rebuild buildings, because that's how we built the entire structure of the United States and buildings and stuff like that. So basically, you're telling me that we got to go back to an old, say, wood building as opposed to steel structures and cement because of fire.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it's an awesome point,
And that's
Jimmy.
it.
Because Building 7,
That's it, yeah.
that is the smoking gun.
Yeah.
Go get your own answers to that.
Mhm.
And if you still don't see it, well, nothing's. There was a scene in the movie that we cut out that was specifically tied to what Jimmy just said. Because we'd pulled up this report from the National Fire Protection, National Fire Protection Institute, something along those lines. It's in the film. It's in the Global Master Edition in the deleted scenes. But the scene that we pulled out is, we went back to, I think it was like, forgive me, I haven't even seen the movie in years, but we go back to 1990 through 2001, and there was something like 300 building fires a year in buildings that are considered high rises, over 13 stories tall. And we worked out all of the buildings that have ever burned that were over 13 stories and how many of them collapsed.
That was your own research.
My own research.
Wow.
So, but it's not like I went, did a report. Did that building burn? No, there's other places that already capture parts of the research. You just have to amalgamate them. Don't worry about it. So, as it turns out, there were 3,000 building fires in this 10-year span. And in this 10-year span, 3 buildings collapsed because of fire. Okay? So if 3 buildings collapse out of 3,000, then there's a ratio of 1,000 to 1. For every 1,000 buildings that catch fire, one of them is going to collapse.
It happened twice.
Right? Because of fire. Now, of course, those 3 buildings, the only 3 buildings that have ever collapsed in the history of steel frame building fires, were the buildings on 9/11. So we had this little statistical probability. We actually pulled it out because the other evidence was just stronger. But I really fought with our producer on this because I wanted this in there. And it basically went like this. For the first building to collapse, that's a 1 in 1,000 probability. We all understand where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the next building to collapse sequentially, do you know what we do in order to find out what the odds that 2 buildings would collapse? Any ideas?
Double it, or
We take 1 out of 1,000, so 1 over 1,000 times 1 over 1,000. So the odds that both trade centers would have collapsed, now the odds of that's 1 in a million, okay? We're getting now into lottery numbers. We're not at a number that's so large that a scientist says miracle. That happens when you've got 10 to, I believe it's the 10th power.
there's a formula for miracles.
We'll get to that in a sec. Then the third building collapses. So then you take, the first 2 buildings collapsing is a 1 in a million chance. Now it's another 1 over times 1,000. And you now have, for those 3 buildings to be the only buildings that have ever collapsed in history because of fire, that it was those 3 on the same day was a 1 in 1 billion chance of happening. And that now we get beyond jet fuel and accident. Those are the kinds of things that it's not intellectual, it's psychological if you keep turning your back to it and turning it away. So what is it about someone that makes someone seek it out? And what is it about someone that makes them hide from it?
I think there's a lot of factors into that. I would like to point out the saying ignorance is bliss because I've begun to
Absolutely.
understand it more and more. I mean, it might not be it wasn't even my choice, that I went the other route. I went to try to enlighten myself, but how many people I just wonder, at that point of enlightenment, understand that statement, ignorance is bliss, and where that comes from, and that you can't get that back again. It's an innocence. It's like a childlike innocence that you get robbed of, and there's not really a way of ever getting those pieces back together that same way.
That's a good way to put it. And so we have all these quotes because they're coming out of this quote book that was written, not quite finished, but it somehow by hook or crook. Maybe you'll play a role in that. We're going to get this thing done and published. But one of them was a quote that I actually put in for me, which is ignorance is bliss, period, temporarily, period.
Yeah.
Now, the temporarily never used to be in there. I used to be, when I first learned this, a year in, I remember I'd be on the deck out back with my ex. We'd be drinking wine. I'm just going, do you ever wish we just never discovered this? Never knew. I know she'd be like, yeah, I did. But I was torn. I want to know the truth.
Yeah.
I wish it was the truth I wanted to know. But at the end of the day, I always want just give me the truth. The rest will work itself out.
It makes you wonder, though, if you'll ever be satisfied, to be honest with you. Because
What do you mean? In what way?
what answer is going to satisfy you? At what point do you know enough? I mean, do we ever know everything? Or, you know what I'm saying? Do we ever win? Do we ever complete the mission? You get what I'm saying? There's so many ways to put it. I don't know. Do we get to the other
That's why I
side?
think that a lot of baby boomers are so fixed in their mindsets, and they're up in age now where they've lived their whole life knowing, or if they do accept any of this as truth, that to them a lot of it is shocking and traumatic, because if they really don't want to accept what's going on, I don't want to use a
they were
personal
the
example,
generation
but-
that was brainwashed by the trust your government.
Yes.
Government is good.
Yep.
Government is
And,
God,
like-
and then you start to believe it.
Yeah, like my
You said the
like
baby
my
baby
parents,
boomers. So what
Mhm.
ages is that?
Like my mom's
Born in
72,
45
40,
through
50s,
about
World War II
65.
babies.
So my grandmother's. That makes complete sense to me. So I feel like
very stuck in their head and don't want to change that mindset.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like when I talk to certain parts of my family that are in that age range, they understand, and I think they, oh yeah, I know that's going on, yeah, but they kind of push it aside, like, because they don't want to deal with it. They figure, I'm at the end of my life, I don't want to really. They feel satisfied, you know what I mean? They've done what they've had to do. Like,
Yeah.
what are they going to do now? That's what I feel like they feel like, they don't want to accept it, because maybe they're at the end of their, age or their lifespan, where they feel that, that they don't have to worry about it.
right,
And that's
but then
scary.
it passes it on to us.
Absolutely.
So
It's for
now
us to-
we're worried
Yeah.
about it,
Oh, yeah.
and we're trying to wake up other people. But it doesn't. I mean, certain people just don't make a
Don't wanna
difference.
accept it, yeah.
They have that crossroads, and that's their choice. So I used to waste a lot of energy on people that don't care. But then I came to realize, you can plant that seed, but then ultimately I have to walk away regardless. I don't have time to put into whether you're going to choose to, retain this knowledge or not, and do something with it. More importantly,
Right,
because it's not for you, it's for you to pass on.
right.
But yeah, I agree that they don't want to take responsibility in that, but it's also, it's probably got to be very hard. I believe they have a lot of guilt,
Oh, yeah.
and that they don't know what to deal, like they cannot deal with it.
That is a perfect way to put it.
I've
The baby
seen-
boomer generation.
My grandma can't
They
process
should.
the guilt of it. I've literally seen what it's done to my family, and as a child, I called it as, like, for what I seen it, and they were mind blown by the fact that I was like aware of what these things were going on and like how deeply rooted they were as a kid, and how I could say like, hey, now I'm here and I'm messed up and I got to deal with this stuff because you guys didn't have to,
Right.
and nobody would.
Right.
So now I do,
Not knowing how to handle it, or
and I'm still a kid.
yeah.
And now I have kids, and I'm still a kid with that to deal with.
Right.
We're
So
all
that
kids on the
way,
inside.
you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't go to my children that are now here. Because, I mean, I could be just another one of those people that's like, hey, I know it's there, but it's not my responsibility.
No, that's
Right,
like
right.
when my kid comes home from school. Like it's deprogramming. He knows. I'm like, listen, buddy. And he's in second grade. I'm like, you're gonna have to learn two realities: the one they teach you at school, and the one that's really going on. Because you'd said something about like, where does it end? Where do you get whole again? Because once you go in, some people just like leave the rabbit hole and just take cover, and they take their losses, and they just try to cope with life with what they know, all this dark stuff. They just try and block it out. But invariably, it comes in. And what I found, like the people that go all the way, like at least for me, and this is very subjective. With that said, I've said before, like I would never renounce this, even to death. Literally, that's how certain I am of it for myself. But where this ultimately ended up is getting that answer you were looking for, where all of a sudden everything makes sense. Oh, okay. This is organized evil. The people that pulled this off, they're related to each other with these people that are behind the central bank. And oh my God, all these people are leaving these families. They say they praise Lucifer, this fallen angel. And all of a sudden the Bible starts to be a devil, hell. And for me, I had that moment where that's what changed my life. And it began to change it because it's just something I knew, man. I can't prove it in court. I can't prove love my son either. A good defense attorney could poke holes in that. Oh, well, did you have a cigarette in front of him 2 months? Well, did you drive, without a seatbelt? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, I shouldn't be saying this name before. That was hypothetical, people. Just kidding. Very safe household. Just want everyone to... So the point is I lost my train of thought. There is, you do break. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, one of the things we put up for the show tonight, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Because when you figure out, well, here's what's happened for me. This doesn't happen for everyone, so all I can talk about is this experience. But when I realized this is about God and evil and deception and all leading up to Satan's grand plan, the one that was warned about all throughout history, 66 books written across 1,500 years and guys in different languages, where guy A writes a part of the story that's completed by guy B, and they're writing it at the same time, and they don't even know each other. And only looking back from a third point in time can you tell there's something, whatever was behind writing this had access to the future, was able to see it in some way or control it or something. Because here we are, right on the precipice of this, we have a word for it called the New World Order. But at the end of the day, it's what David Spangler at the UN said. No one's entering the New Age or the New World Order without making a Luciferian pledge. You don't publish that book and have that in writing if there's not teeth behind it. And the devil's in the details, man. And when you find out at the end of the day, what the real enemy is and who's really behind all of human misery, really. Dana Carvey had her right. It really was Satan. Actually, if you kind of follow it back, he sort of, yeah. And that, once you get it, and then you realize here's how this stuff doesn't have power over you, and here's why you're going to be okay, and just bless you. There is a calm that comes over you. I don't know. I know we're not all there. In fact, I might be the only one in this room that's there. You guys know where I am on that. But anyone else has anyone else put this together? Like this might actually be like an organized evil, ancient evil thing we're up against, or do we look at this as 9/11 was just about some guys wanting to get rich on oil? What do you guys? What is the highest agenda at play here in your minds?
Money.
You think it's money?
I feel like it's more than money. I feel like it's population control, and our whole DNA is being manipulated. So they're able to ruin us before we're even born.
Well, this is it. Start adding. So use the food documentary.
They're
blew
changing
me
our
away.
genes.
They're messing and
They're messing with our
I'm
genes.
growing a tail.
They use the same. It's the same template overlaid across all
So
those
they
different.
got all the good genes with all the good hair.
That's why the Queen of England is
What's up with that?
190, and she hasn't aged since
No wrinkles, nothing.
since D-Day invasion in June, 44. So it's like at some point, if this is all random, at some point there would be something that benefits humanity. But everywhere you go, food, GMOs, it's polluting our bodies. Water, fluoride,
It's a
polluting our
fight
bodies.
everywhere you go.
5G network, polluting our literally DNA, the air, the chemtrails.
I just want to know how the other side lives. Do they have constant
What it's
hazmat
like, yeah.
suits with nothing penetrates? You know what I'm saying? Where do they live where it's cool?
the other side.
Yeah, the 1%ers. How do they literally live? I don't care about what cars they drive and what kind of fancy houses they live in. I want to know the water they drink, the food they eat, where they live.
It's not
where
what the
it's,
commoners eat.
Everything's
The air is
pure,
not
clean.
contaminated, and I want to know those things.
Look, these people operate on a different level. There's a scene coming up in the movie. I haven't even talked about it yet. This is the first time I'm going to mention it. For me, I'm going to put it in the movie. There's a few things I need to verify to make certain that a couple details are tied together. But there was a reporter. It wasn't a reporter. There was a man by the name of Mike, I want to say Bernicia. Mike Bernicia. Bernicia. British guy. He was a script writer. And he was approached by a woman who called herself Petra, code name on purpose. And she started saying to him, look, he does not identify how he knew her, because this woman is right now on the run. The story is incredible, but it ties into everything else about 9/11. In the late 1990s, 98, 99, 2000, this woman, Petra, had confessed to this friend of hers that is a screenwriter that, look, these East Coast American billionaires are planning an attack on New York City that is going to begin World War III, and it's and like, you know, at first the guy's like, okay, whatever, and then I gotta get the order of this right. So she starts talking about it, and her husband gets wind of the fact that, because it's like all of the ladies in their little circles, they all knew this. Their husbands all knew it. And these are the guys that are walking around with the Henry Kissingers of the world. Okay, this is the level we're dealing with. That identified by Mike Bernicia as the East Coast billionaires of the United States. All right. And by the way, do we have any... So, yeah, do you need a handkerchief? Because I go... All right. You sure you don't want to do that on screen?
We never know what may come out of there.
So, Petra starts giving him these stories, saying they're going to take these towers down, they're going to do this, and this Bernicia guy just doesn't believe it. And I'm screwing up part of the story. Point is this. Her people, like the family she married into, her own husband figured this out, that she was going to talk to the press, and her husband said, don't you dare do that. And the woman's talking like, he said it to me in a voice that I knew I was going to be dead. And she felt threatened by her husband, and she was trying to figure out what to do with her
By her
kids.
husband.
Pardon me?
By her husband?
Yes.
Wow.
Basically, this woman said, look, we can't be a part of people that are going to cause a terrorist attack in New York City. We need to go to the newspaper. And her husband stopped her and said, don't you dare. And she felt like, my life, I'll be killed. She kept talking to this Bernicia guy, though. And all of a sudden, by now she's separated from her husband. She's not going to be a part of this. She's got the kids somewhere. And the husband and she start to make up. And he's like, honey, you're right. We can't do this. You know, I've had second thoughts. You know, I'm supposed to go to Nairobi. Why don't we do a family vacation? Or just you and I, let's get out of here. So she's feeling good about those guys getting back together with her husband. So she goes to Nairobi, Kenya. I believe it's Kenya. Maybe double check that. So he has some business to take care of in the city, and he's like, I'll be over to why don't you just meet me at the embassy? I'm going to be right next door. I'll pick you up at 10:15. And the woman's sitting there at 10:15, and a guy taps her on her shoulder who knows her. And he's like, you got to get out of here. And she knew him because he was one of the security guards that worked for their family. And he said, get up now. You got to get out of here right now. And he just like shuffled her out of there. And as they're walking out of the building, kaboom. The Nairobi embassy.
In the movies.
It blew up. And about an hour or two later, there was another embassy that exploded. Now, here's how these guys operate. Because when they do something, they don't just do one thing. See, there was a big message being sent. Because the woman that talked about this in her little tea circles was supposed to have been blown up in that Nairobi. Now, she survived it.
Right.
And she's on the run today. Now, I don't know how you can be on the run from these people. Because they control everything. But what is interesting is that the name Osama bin Laden had not been known to the American public until the Nairobi bombing. It was those bombings that put his name on the news
Yeah,
to set him up as the, you know, the coming bad guy, the new Lee Harvey Oswald. And all of it there again was fake. Those, according to her, those bombs were planted by the same people that pulled off 9/11. They're doing this stuff all over the world. And we're inches away from... Do we know what a new world order would look like? What do you think it would look like? Tell them about that. I'll be
A
right back.
new world order? Oh, God. Probably a place where everybody has a safe place to go. There's no such thing as arguing. There's no such thing as a wrong opinion. There's no such thing as losing, I guess you could say. Everything's becoming about this participation, this new wave of, what is it? This new wave of, I'm losing it. I'm sorry. Or I'm the victim, I guess you could say, and I don't know, I'm losing it again.
I think he's asking what their agenda is, not necessarily
I don't
like
know, man.
ideally.
Oh, their agenda?
Yeah, the new world order that they're trying to put in place. What is that? If
Well,
you could describe it, what would it look like?
I don't know. Are they not trying to do it right now? Is that not the point?
That's what we're asking.
I say we're in it right now. I say that if these people, if they truly wanted to control and to change the complete makeup of the world, if they truly wanted to, they would have done it. They probably have done it already. For all we know, this is the new world, the new order. We could have gone through multiple society collapses and just not have, known it, because obviously society or history is written by the victor. We don't know
It
if
is.
there are
And history has
governments
been. We
before
don't.
us.
Earth history is not what we're taught in school.
100%.
So I heard what you were saying about we might be in the new world order now. I don't think it's something that it's a switch that get turned on, and one day you're in it and one day you're not in it. It's a progression, and we are definitely much further down the road than I think our founding fathers ever thought we possibly could be. But that to me that's basically a Hitler in control of the whole world. That's really what it is. It's fascism. It's the marriage of religion and business. We're kind of starting to see it now.
Population control.
Nah. We were under a fascist regime in the last 40 years. It's actually not going fascism anymore.
Well, the difference is, you're right, Jimmy, because fascism, this was about Kennedy's day, but the lines between fascism, socialism, communism, they're really all shades of the same monster, which is give everything you have to your authority figures, and then they will redistribute it as they see fit. Some of them based on just population, some of them based on merit, fascism, but it is overwhelming. It's total control of our lives to the government. So when you go, and this is what drives me, this is just what I can't deny, because it was written about, to see in writing, written 2,000 years ago. You can't deny it. That, this nation is going to be ruined quickly, but then it's going to be reformed in 2,000 years. And a guy named David's going to announce it. And David Ben-Gurion announced Israel. And all these other things will be happening right around this time, including this, what the Bible calls the last days, that, the push for Satan's new world order, because the religion of this one world government that's coming, it's going to be loose. This is what he said he was going to get everyone to praise him. Now, maybe he's a made-up figure, and I'm completely wrong. But holy cow, if not every piece in this puzzle fits this picture. That's just,
Hey, I just thought of something because I'm weird. So when you said Lucifer, I don't know, I randomly was like, hey, people might call him Lucy, like for a nickname. And then I thought, there's that Lucy movie. Have you ever seen that?
Yes, that's an awesome
Where it's
movie.
like, you meet your mind's actual tap
Use your
into your
mind,
mind's
yes.
potential or whatever.
100%.
I started thinking about that, and this literally all just happened right here within 30 seconds. Sorry, my mind does that, but So I was
That's
thinking,
why
like,
you're here. That's why you're paid the big bucks, honey. So we need to hear this. Let's
but
go.
no, I was just thinking, like, that's probably what happens to these people that sell their soul to the devil. They get like this, like, tap. I don't know, like this super.
Oh, I see.
You get what
you're
I'm saying?
Yeah, like they turn
Um,
on their brains. You know, I feel like the uppers already have their brains turned on, and they sort of suppress it with us.
Yeah, like.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the meds we get are filled with
That's what
fluoride
I'm
and
saying.
mental dampeners.
Whereas we're not necessarily incapable, but we've been tampered with since before we are alive. So we're already against the wind, you know.
Yeah, you've
this
got what,
uphill
18
battle.
vaccinations or 100. You've got so many by the time you're 18, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and then it's
You've
in
got
everything.
poisons coming into us. We think lifespan's getting longer. It's actually dropping. People don't
So
even.
the people that worship him are probably like that Lucy lady. I was just thinking to myself, I mean, that seems like a superhuman race, but really that's what we're supposed to be able to function at normally. And instead, because we deal with all these chemicals that we're dealing with,
Yeah,
we
I have a
can't.
theory that the truth is hidden in science fiction. So when I see a movie, you guys
No,
ever
it
seen
is.
Limitless?
That's the same idea. It's the same exact
And
thing.
it's almost like I've taken Adderall
They've made
before,
so many
and I'm just
movies
like,
like that.
when you do that, like you're a lot sharper. You're picking up details. Your memory recall is off the charts. I mean, it does things. Caffeine does the same thing. There are things you can do to stimulate your-
Cannabinoids. We're supposed to have those. They say that, you know, that it's illegal and that it's toxic for us and blah, blah, blah. And then now all of a
Schedule
sudden they're
wrong.
making all this money off of it. Surprise, surprise.
To Schedule 1 drug, okay.
But yeah, we literally possess that same chemical in our body naturally. Who are you to try to tell me that I can't replenish it? We're actually depleted of it. It's like a vitamin that everybody needs it. Babies need it.
Yeah, other Christians will not agree with me on this one, but I'm very pro marijuana. It grows naturally, all right, and everything that was growing
Didn't
naturally. At one
Jesus
point,
smoke it?
Yes.
God looked around and
I
said,
thought so.
all is good. I don't know if Jesus smoked it, but like anything, if you make it your idol, if you become a slave to it, it's a sin. I'm not here to tell you what is or what is, because I can't go an hour without committing a sin. I don't think any human can really. But
It's tough.
it actually is, because if you actually look what a foolish thought is a sin. That one right there, I can't even go 1 minute without it, to be honest
Maybe
with
if
you.
we were on like Lucy's level, though, we wouldn't, you know.
But
I
I'll
don't
say
know.
this.
I don't know.
I've seen now with my own eyes and done enough research that I know what it does to people with autism, how it heals them. I know that it can heal people with cancer.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen people that have seizures?
Yeah.
That would normally, it'd be a 24-hour recovery. They give them a little marijuana, and 5 minutes later, they're...
One little marijuana does the trick.
One little marijuana.
Well,
Rick Simpson oil.
we're doing a thing tomorrow night, by the way. You can come down to Russell Industrial. I'll plug this now.
Yeah, plug it.
It's LSGH, the healing sessions, and we actually talk about the healing powers of marijuana and
good.
obviously the different dosages. Now, we're not doctors. We're not people with degrees. We're just giving people knowledge, and we want people to come out. One of the ladies that'll be speaking, she actually had cancer, and she cured her cancer with cannabinoids, cannabis, THC, Rick Simpson oil.
RSO.
So yeah, sometimes people get them confused. There's different things. So we do inform people of what is obviously Rick Simpson oil, and also which is CBDs, which has no Rick Simpson oil or THC in it. You know. And stuff
What is
like that.
What does the CBD stand
CBD
for?
would be more like a vitamin. You know, and that's something that we have been fighting for many years, to show people that you
It
have
doesn't
them
have
in your
THC
body.
in it.
You should be replenishing these stuffs in your body. You should
Well, no,
take
it
these
still does like pain relief,
instead of vitamins.
but you won't test dirty for it. So it's an alternative for people that don't want to get high. They don't want a chance of even getting high.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
won't get
so
high.
to speak.
CBD's weird.
It'll
with
still
that,
treat
though.
things like anxiety,
Yep.
joint muscle pain, stuff
Absolutely.
like that. You can even put it in your coffee.
Yep.
It's great. You can buy it at the
cream.
gas station now.
That's the other thing too, is like, you know, you really want to make sure if you are looking to heal yourself, you want to go to a reputable,
True, because it's
Um,
oversaturated now.
whether that be a medicinal facility or someone that actually carries CBD. That's a company. And that's some of the things you'll learn tomorrow night. So come on out. It's at Russell Industrial Center tomorrow night from 7 to 11. We'll have a bunch of people talking about CBDs, Rick Simpson oil, how they're cured. Another guy who's got massive insomnia, and literally he's on an indica that puts him to sleep like a baby. He wakes up, he's not feeling like he needs coffee to get up in the morning. He gets up and goes. So
Northern Lights.
Yeah, this is let me put it to you this way. I've always liked booze. I wasn't really into weed until in my 30s, but I did start smoking for a while, and it ruled my life.
Me and Dave need some weed counseling to cure our crazy.
Oh my, we need.
Is there like a specific
Dude, we'll do
strain
some
for that?
bargain shopping. I mean, and we'll advertise them
Yeah, we'll
on
plug
air.
you all day.
Look, we're like, hey, we're a live product sample.
hey,
We
Tame-
just
tame me,
can't
Jimmy.
lose it.
Tame me.
Exactly. Dude, we are gonna have to take a Xanax before.
I'll
we
let
should-
you pet me.
Come on.
So
If you calm me down enough, I will let you stroke my head.
there you go.
That's the deal.
all right. So when we talk,
No eye contact. Sorry.
when we're talking about I'm gonna beat your ass. You know, I wish I could just talk.
Ooh.
I wish you were at Micknos right now, so I could just say what's just ready to go. All right, so when you look at 9/11, and so is 9/11 for you like the one, or are there other things you've connected to? Because you said money. I asked why the money, but these guys already print money. They don't need money. In fact, every dollar in circulation, literally on the planet, unless it was printed in North Korea, Iran, or Cuba, is money owed to the priests behind the power of all the countries' governments.
I think they're trying to ruin everybody except them.
Well, yeah. So
You know?
now, when they come out of these families, they're told now, and I believe they believe this. That they're told, look, we have a serious population problem in the world. We're eating up our natural resources. I think they themselves even believe,
Aren't we dying faster than we can keep up at this point? I don't know. Maybe that's not.
There's
right.
Tony brought up the percentage of we're at a 1.8% growth in the
okay,
U.S.
So I did hear that. From
So there is a certain replenishment rate you've got to hit, or your population drops.
Yes.
Well, if we think about that upon their master, like as part of the other plan that, like, I don't know, most of the low income neighborhoods and whatnot, they're reproducing a lot actually. So it's like, in comparison to that, and then the fact that we have all these people dying, like it's even that more so that people are
the poor
dying
poor.
because low income people often like literally have children to make money because that's the only way that they can survive sometimes is like through the government helping them, and then their whole life's taken care of, you know, whatever. But that's just the way that it ends up being. And so it's like really messed up that that's part of it. Is what's the word gentrification mean?
Isn't that when like a community you want to mold it into a certain?
That is exactly what I mean. I wanted to
and
make
and
sure.
I'm not sure. but
Gentrification.
if
Yes,
not, we're going.
that word.
It's official 401 show. That's what it means, and I don't care what your dictionary
No,
says.
I'm pretty sure that that's what it is, where they target a society, and it's just like how you go through a community, and only certain communities have gun store, liquor store, gun store, liquor store. I learned this in a Dave Chappelle skit, and it's real, and it's sad. It's kind of funny too because he makes you laugh, but then you're like, how much of a messed up human being am I laughing at this stuff that is real? That like at the end of the day, I mean, I can't say that I like completely relate to that. You know, I'm not a minority, and one day I may become one. I think that's part of the plan, but
I don't know. We could throw in some minority class. Start thinking of one.
I agree with you said
Asian.
that these low income and people that are in poverty are trying to well they do live off the government and assistance,
Yeah,
state
we
aid,
have
so they
to.
do have more kids so they can get the assistance and government and assistance and aid.
I used to blame
and then it's
that.
part
I
of
don't.
them they have to follow the government, so that's just another programming, what I mean? That's just
their
more
whole
programming.
lives
They're
are mapped
controlling
out
them.
for them at that point. At where they go for doctors, where they have to go for food, everything, every aspect of their life is mapped out by the government at that point, and there's really not much wiggle room. other than if you're going to turn to the streets to sell drugs or sell yourself, you know, whatever
They
that
control
may
that
be.
too, you know?
Yeah, and then you're subjective to their ruling where you
Yeah,
end up in a
what's funny
cage.
is at the end of the day, the biggest sex traffickers in the world are the exact same people that did 9/11. I mean, that's sort of the undertone of what this Mueller investigation is, which
Yeah.
was
Never heard
being
this.
mirrored by Q. You know, he's the conspiratorial voice of the
I
American
think that's why
people.
women's voice is being dampened so much in general because, I mean, we're supposed to make up 50-50 of the masses. What happens when we start talking? You know? And we're obviously starting to talk. And things, now look at all these bills being put into place where, you know, it's just messed up. It's messed up. And we're supposed to be 50-50
Double
here, but it's
standard.
never been 50-50. Let's just be
Between
honest.
men and women.
Yeah, between men and women, between black people and white people, between people.
Oh, we are kept in a state of agitation with, at any given time, 50 groups. I mean,
Right.
you know, Christian, Muslim, white, you know, Hispanic, Anglo, blah, blah, blah. It's by design. Now, you responded with a wow a minute ago. What was that to?
I don't remember.
The sex trafficking, it was too.
Yeah, I have never heard that. Go elaborate on that, please.
Think about priests and stuff. What's
You
going
wait.
on?
You're not.
Never heard of this.
That what the Mueller investigation is really a cover that the president was allowing to happen while the real investigation of these child sex trafficking rings leading to Pizzagate and what's that dude's island and the Bill Clinton airplane and not just the who's the one of the brothers who's about to go to jail for molesting. I mean, like he's being thrown up as the Bernie Madoff of stock. Come on, the movie producer
Oh,
Abs-
Harry Weinstein?
Weinstein. Thank you.
Really?
I dated a Weinstein and he actually raped me. So I believe that. I'm not even joking. It's
No, I would say
it's a thing.
Weinstein's
It's a
not
thing in their
up for,
family, I guess. It's just
He's
a thing
what?
that they do. The Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein's not up for molesting kids.
No, he's for the casting couch.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah,
casting
he's.
couch.
But still,
However, the
wait,
Podesta
they
brothers.
were kids, though, is the point
Yeah,
at the
it's in the
time.
blood.
It doesn't matter if they were famous or not. I don't care if you're a Hollywood kid or if you grew up in Compton. You're a kid.
All right. Well, people are going to
that
be. Do you want to
nobody-
elaborate on this story? Because people are going to be interested in that.
Oh, yeah, sure. I was young. He preyed on me. I had just
What's
turned
young
18.
for you? 'Cause you were an
I just
adult at
turned
about
18.
12. Okay.
Yeah, kind of. He manipulated me into like working for him. He offered me a job. So I'm like a go-getter. Like I would have never just like dated somebody, but he offered me a job. So he offered me a job. Then eventually I come to find out that like, you know, he wanted to date me. And then it was like, and then I realized that like he did have some money. So like it was like my first step on the wrong side. Cause I was always taught
How old was this guy compared to you?
he was 20 years my elder.
Oh, this was the old. This was.
This was my first experience
All
ever
right. I know who
dealing
we're
with a
talking about.
man with money that was older. And I got burned playing with fire. That's exactly what happened. But I mean, it's not like I'm like condoning like, oh, it's cool you raped me. Like I deserved it. But I dated him for a little while. And then I went through a custody battle. I actually got pregnant where like I didn't know if my daughter's father was the father of my kid or if this guy was. Me and him had broken up and I had went back to my daughter's father and then I had gotten pregnant and it was just like the timing, you know? And because of that, I lost my job once I found out that it was my daughter's
the
father.
other guy.
Yeah. But that really didn't matter to me. He turned out to be such a creep that like I didn't really care about that. But then fast forward to me having my child, my daughter's father took her and I had to like fight for custody. I had to get a lawyer. I was only 19 years old. So I moved back in with this man because I woke up one day and I literally only had the clothes on my back and a cell phone. My whole family turned their back against me and I was now fighting a custody battle that I knew nothing about at the age of 19 years old. And And I was always the go-getter with 2 jobs in school. I had 2 cars at the time, and I just like woke up and they were just I had no access to anything. I lost everything. Anyways, I moved in back with him out of desperation, and his philosophy was, like we were together for a little bit, and then I left him. His philosophy was, well, like if you're not gonna give it to me, I'm just gonna take it. And he literally said that.
Ooh.
He admitted that. I got him to admit that in front of my friend, just in case if I ever were to come in power one day where I could fight back, that I had the opportunity to. 'Cause I know the statute is 13
we weren't going to go,
years.
but this is like...
But yeah, so I literally got this grown-ass man to admit that he did that to me in front of a witness.
Was this an event, or was this a way of life for a while where you were back in that... While you were back in the house?
It was what? An event?
Where he was like, oh, I'll just take it if you're not going to give it to me.
I don't know. I know of the one time. I don't know of any more. I know, and I only know because I was getting very sick and I almost got toxic shock syndrome. Because when he raped me, I was actually on my period, and he jammed a tampon inside of me while I was sleeping.
Like I said, folks, it's the unvarnished truth.
I'm an open book, obviously. If anything, I've gone through these things to help heal people. If I don't share them, I would feel
Actually,
worse.
I think there was a girl that reached out to me today on Facebook because she was going through something with her family where she had just found God, and all of a sudden her family is now, they kicked her out of the house, so she's living in an RV in the front yard, and they're trying to separate her from her kid. She's freaking out. And I'm sorry, I got my mind.
You
on
had a
case
girl that
tomorrow.
reached out that was freaking out, and I think you're getting at helping people. That our stories were are helping.
So she was freaking out because she's like, why am I going through this? And everyone's chiming in, and this was like through some Christian group, and one of the answers, which was a great one, was like, sometimes God is going to use you just so you can suffer, so you can teach other people to overcome it. Like that it's like the role Job played in the Old Testament. He did nothing wrong. He loved God. He was doing everything right, and for somehow this little deal between God and Satan gets worked out where Satan challenges God and says, I can turn your people against you. And God's like, no, you can't. And he basically gives him permission to screw up Job's life.
Jeez.
Now, when I first read this, I'm like, what kind of God are we praising here? I mean, this is like fun for him. He's going to ruin this dude's life. But God's got a purpose for everything. And right now, every promise God made to Job was true, was that everything would be doubled. Because Job did lose his children, but he got as many children back. And from God's perspective, the first wave of kids, which are all dead, they're in heaven. The second wave will also be in heaven. His family's doubled. After he went through this torture from the devil, everything came back to him. And that story, not yet, the dude suffered, don't get me wrong, and there were 3 other players in the story, Job's 3 buddies, and all 4 of them effed up. I don't know $1 for that.
No, you don't.
Not even a quarter. And those messages, they're timeless for everyone, because there is no human experience that is not covered in one way or another already in that book. There's nothing. That's what blew me away. And sometimes, hard to swallow, but this is written in a lot of places where sometimes, like when you give yourself to God and you basically go, I'm yours, you're number one, do with me what you will, use me any way you want. Sometimes his plan is to let you suffer so you can overcome it, just so you can show others that you can overcome and survive this. And that very possible. I mean, you already know, I don't think it's an accident.
No.
For a lot of weird reasons. Plus, we have a counseling discount that we're working on, so
I think
we're
we
stuck
should,
with each other now.
Do some Groupon promotional work.
All right, so how much time do we have, Jimmy?
We were looking at less than 15 minutes. Let me see. Yep, we got 13 minutes.
All right. Helen, you spent some time in the Navy,
Yes.
military.
Yes.
We really are freewheeling it because military. You said something about military, and if it's something you can't talk about or don't want to touch, then shut it down and we'll go somewhere else.
Okay.
Did you ever have an experience similar to the one that Sid was talking about, where there were things you observed, where you're just like, that does not jibe with, well, I think we're here, what we're supposed to be. Did you ever see or hear? Were you ever exposed to any of that?
Well, yes, personal experience, yes. Well, most people I know know that I deal with depression and anxiety, so it's not a secret. But it started in the military, and I think that they use me as a guinea pig for a lot of their meds.
Ooh,
lot.
that's not a conspiracy theory. That they do that.
Oh, yes. I've been on every antidepressant you could think of, and I'm pretty immune to them now. But, I was only in for 3.5 years active. But now that I look back and see, there's so many things that didn't make sense to me. That why was I going through all that and dealing with so much at that time? And, I just felt like I was so naive and so young. And it was my first time away from home. 18, 19, 20. I was out before I was 21. But now that I look back, there was no doubt in my mind that I was used as a guinea pig.
That has been going on. This is now documented. Of course, like I like to say, Anderson Cooper's not going to box it up.
I'm saying this, to be honest with you. I don't feel comfortable talking about it too much. But
all right, then that's totally understandable.
I do.
But there is
Resonate with
the
what you're saying.
There has been a level of testing going on with humanity on many different levels, but one of just some, like you start to see these common traits, and one of them is ex-military. A lot of these people are just effed with. Do you guys know a man by the name of George Estabrook?
Familiar.
So this was actually very personal to me because my sister and my dad had a very strange life. My dad grew up around here. He was in World War II. He joined the Navy. The war ends. The Navy sends him to Colgate to go to school at Colgate University. Something comes over my dad. He decides he wants to learn to speak Spanish. He does. And he spends the next 20 years, he's in Cuba, he's in Honduras, he's in El Salvador, he's in Panama, Guatemala, all these places where there's a revolution that's led by the Central Intelligence Agency. Historical fact now, you can go look it up. No, it's not like my sister and I are sitting around going, do you think Dad was in the CIA? Nothing like that. However, about 1.5 years ago, I'm doing research on this, on mind control and what the CIA had done with mind control. And I came across this man named George Estabrook, who was cutting-edge mind control scientist, and this would have been in the early 1940s through the late 1940s. And he had come out of a Nazi ideology out of Nazi Germany before the Nazis, were officially at war with everyone. I'm not going to say it was part of Project Paperclip, the operation that got all of the Nazis into NASA and the CIA, and they're still alive and well, the ideology. So George Estabrook, I'm just doing research on CIA mind control and looking up doctors like Dr. Joseph Delgado, who was already getting charging bulls just with a little chip implant in the 1950s and 60s, getting them to just stop. Like he could control their behavior. And they've been applying this to humans, and to the point where, I think there's... Let's just go back to George Estabrook. So I come across a letter written from George Estabrook to J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI. And this would have been in about 1948, 1947. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but George Estabrook was stationed at Colgate University. Now, Colgate's an all-male school. It had 1,000 students. It's like a second-tier Ivy. It's not Ivy League, but they like to say they are, but they're not. But they're damn close. 1,000 guys, all-male school. Most of them were military guys. And he's writing to J. Edgar Hoover. And you can, I mean, the letters are in, you can, FBI.vault.gov, the government website. These aren't conspiracy. You can go see them. Where he's writing saying, okay, essentially, I'm going to paraphrase several communications back and forth. We have developed a form of mind control that's basically spotless. We have recruited, we've got 40 students from both the Navy, the Army, Air Force. I don't believe existed yet because that peeled off of the Army. You tell me what year. Would you know that? Marines, I think, is still part of the Navy. Okay. And he's like, we've got 40 students, and he said, none of them know they're in this program. But right now, they would do anything you ask. They're the best secret agent you could ever have because they can do a mission, and once they're done with it, they will have no recollection of it. Okay? So I'm like just doing the math because then I go back to my dad's. So he's also having these conversations with Alan Dulles, CIA. Because my dad spent the next 20 years where? Everywhere the CIA went to create a revolution, my dad was there. El Salvador, Nicaragua, all through Central America. It's why I'm Latin. He met my mom in Colombia. And then my dad, where does he end up? In Buenos Aires, Argentina, hanging out with who? A bunch of ex-Nazis that had left Germany, had arrived to Argentina, and those were his social circles. He used to talk about, he used to laugh because he played bridge with the people he was at war with 15 years ago. And I just started thinking, because then, you start to add up all the drinking problems and the things he'd say at night that made no sense, like stuff that's almost scary. And I mean, I'm weird enough being a conspiracy theorist, but there were times where he'd be having a cocktail. He's like, son, they died because I didn't do anything. And I didn't know what he was talking about. It's just a lot of this circled back when this George Estabrook research, this guy was at Colgate when my dad, and it always made me wonder. I called up my sister that day. I'm like, Nancy, have you ever thought about this? And she's like, Dave, I have, on her own, without me talking to her. She's like, I have thought about it because there was a lot of strange things, like where he traveled, where he was. And then you go see what the CIA does to turn their governments. All of it ultimately is to bring in a central bank. I mean, that is what happened to Central America in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and even still happening. Was who owns the CIA? I mean, the central bank. Ultimately, the CIA is their Gestapo in a sense. And here again, statistically, how is it that this dude got caught in 6 revolutions? I mean, he wrote a book about it. They called him Ricardo because he was caught in one in Havana. In fact, so he was living in Cuba, in Havana. And this would have been when Batista was still in power, so I'm guessing 60, 61, 62. And he never gave us the details, but for whatever reason, and he was in Cuba when there were several Americans who were living in Cuba in the early 1960s that went to the embassy, the U.S. embassy, and said, there's something going on. My dad was one of them because these military people were coming in and starting to build this equipment. The media said that this was the Russian circus. And my dad and several other Americans, just out of the military, I mean, this is still Cold War heating up. Remember, late 1950s. He's like, this isn't the circus. There's something else going on here. Well, those guys that later turned out were the guys that were building missile silos that became the impetus for the Cuban Missile Crisis. And all of a sudden, at one point, my dad is given some sort of a notice, and he's like, you got to leave the country tonight. You can leave with 1 suitcase and $5 in cash. That was the law leaving Havana as an American. And this would have been, like I said, 58, 59, 60. And he always tells the story like he spent all his money. They washed cars in champagne. Just they spent all their money. They couldn't take it with them. He left the nation, and he said that a lot of the friends that decided not to go, and he never told us what it was that summoned him. And I asked him. I mean, I remember I was your age, and I'm curious about my dad. What did he do? And he never said anything about it, but he did say that the people that didn't go were all executed, and that it effed him up. I mean, that guy had demons that were buried. That even no one was closer to him than I was, but there were even things like he wouldn't. And I always wondered. So when I brought that up to my sis a year and a half ago, and she's like, "It makes sense."
Have you ever seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind?
Yes.
That movie.
Why do I have
Oh
goosebumps
my
right
gosh,
now?
because I got some really crazy flashbacks and all these downloads when I saw it. I saw it a long time ago, and then I saw it again last summer when I was really waking up to a lot of stuff. And so I started Googling some stuff, and it wouldn't let me go further than a couple pages. Google actually told me, shut.
Really?
I'm not kidding you. On everything I
This
know.
is Alexa talking on Google's behalf,
They
Helen.
pretty much
Turn the
"It's time for
computer
bed
off, you
now."
son
I
of...
swear to God, I've never experienced anything like that in my life, and it resonated. That movie resonated with me a lot because I feel like they tried to erase some shit in my mind. Sorry, I owe a couple dollars, but I feel like they really. I feel like kind of the military.
You're gonna lose count.
Yeah, mind control. Mind control.
Oh god, and a lot of unsuspecting people seeking help would end up in certain hospitals where there's a CIA funded program
I'm
going
so scared.
on.
Why do you think I thought I was gonna die in Vegas? I was like, no. I literally started screaming. I mean, I called Dave screaming, and
Yeah,
the
dude.
nurse
She had me
hung
so
up the
freaked out.
phone.
I'm like, all right, dude.
Seriously, and I felt bad, but I was dead serious in my feelings at that
Oh, I
moment.
bet.
I had a flashback because I did not know I've ever been to this hospital before. They had all of my information.
Really? Oh, I think I saw you.
Okay,
say that.
so
That's-
this is the same hospital that I had my first concussion head injury ever.
Wow.
When I first had my son, when all this stuff began.
That's incredible.
And I went there, and they said my contact name and everything, my emergency contact, and that's when I flipped my lid because it's one thing to have my information on a hospital database, but how do you know who I was with at that time? So that's where I was like, I'm gonna die here. I'm literally everything came full circle.
Oh,
now
this
it's
makes
time
more
to die.
sense.
Blame you for
Now
being
it's time to
upset at all.
die. I'm either gonna die or this is the hump that I have to get over.
'Cause
And
I
so
get-
now I'm calling Dave, get me out of here.
Oh, you think you were that clear? She calls me up. All I hear is, murder!
I was screaming.
Murder!" And then a nurse goes,
would've
give
been
me
the
that
same
phone.
way.
I asked them if they could put me to sleep, like I was a dog.
Oh my
I was
I
a little
asked them if they
scared.
could put me to sleep, and the lady chuckled and laughed and said, "No, we cannot do that." I tried.
I don't
was
feel
like-
safe at the hospital. Put me to sleep, please. That is hilarious.
I meant take me out, but whatever.
Yeah, I was about ready to go get your ass from Las Vegas.
No, you.
So I'm like, I get
He
it.
was.
I don't blame you for being afraid there.
No, dude, and actually,
At all.
I'll tell you, here's how you can stop being afraid. Jimmy, are we about out of time? Should we wrap this? All right, then I'm going to wrap. This is how. Perfect ending.
Yes.
Aiden, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Aiden.
Yes, you did.
We
great.
are, we're going to talk about you behind your back and see how you did. Actually, I think you,
Good kid, Mama.
I think you got some potential, my friend.
Cool.
I'm going to leave it with this. You don't need to be scared at the end of the day. If you find out who Jesus is, what kind of protection he offers, find out why he came here. Don't take a chance on it.
CIA is gonna eat your brains if you don't.
Just look into it. Even if there's a 0.0000001% chance that your eternal soul is possibly at risk, it's worth looking into it. Your house has less chance of catching fire. We will see you guys next week. 401 show. Good to have you back.
Thanks.
Feels-
It's good to be back.
Feels
you're back,
whole
Sam.
again. I was feeling very empty without you. Jimmy, same. Aiden, Rachel.
Jimmy's perfect, by the
Greek
way.
Goodness. You are Greek goodness. I love you. All right, guys. We'll see you next week.